The studio lights felt hotter than usual as Jaime Fox settled into the chair across from Bill Maher, the kind of heat that made even a seasoned performer aware of every breath. The audience applauded loudly when his name was announced, some rising to their feet, others craning forward with phones half hidden, eager to capture a moment before it even happened. Jaime flashed his trademark smile, waved casually, and cracked a quick joke as he sat down, instantly loosening the room. Bill Maher leaned back with a grin that suggested control, the host who had seen it all and expected another sharp but manageable conversation. For the first few minutes, everything flowed exactly as planned. They traded stories about stand-up, Hollywood absurdities, and the strange pressure of being both loved and criticized by millions. Laughter rolled across the studio in waves. Jaime mimicked a famous impression, the crowd roaring as Bill slapped his desk in approval. It felt like one of those episodes destined to be replayed in clips for years, two quick-witted entertainers feeding off each other's timing. Then the tone shifted, subtly at first. Bill tilted his head and pivoted the conversation towards social responsibility in entertainment, making an offhand remark about people being too sensitive these days, and how comedians were walking on eggshells. Jaime nodded slowly, still smiling, but his eyes sharpened. He responded with humor, framing his disagreement as a story, drawing laughter as he explained that sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was awareness. The audience applauded, sensing the friction but enjoying the dance. Bill smirked, sensing an opening. He interrupted, adding a pointed comment about celebrities, playing the victim, while still cashing enormous checks. A few laughs echoed, but they were thinner now. Jaime leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, voice calm but deliberate. He spoke about growing up with consequences that weren't theoretical, about words shaping perception, about jokes landing differently depending on who was already carrying the weight. The room grew quieter. You could hear the faint hum of the cameras. Maher raised his hands, half in mock surrender, half in challenge. "Come on, Jaime," he said, chuckling, "you're not saying comedy needs permission now." That line landed wrong. A ripple of discomfort spread through the audience. Jaime straightened, the smile fading. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He explained that comedy had always evolved, that the best comedians listened as much as they spoke, that punching down wasn't rebellion, it was laziness. Applause erupted, louder this time, but uneven, divided between those cheering the conviction and those unsure whether this was still a joke. Bill cut in again, sharper now, suggesting that audiences were being trained to be offended and that artists were being silenced by outrage mobs. Jaime shook his head, letting a beat of silence hang before responding. That silence felt heavy, intentional. When he spoke, his words were measured but unmistakably firm. He talked about responsibility not as censorship but as choice, about power not as something to deny but something to handle carefully. The laughter had vanished entirely. Even the applause paused, as if the crowd didn't know whether it was allowed to react. From the corner of the studio, a producer subtly raised a hand, a silent signal to steer things back. Bill ignored it. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing, and made a comment about drawing lines where none existed before, implying that the problem wasn't comedians, it was audiences demanding change. That's when the temperature in the room truly spiked. Jaime's jaw tightened. He replied without humor now, his voice steady but charged, saying some lines had always existed, they were just invisible to those who never crossed them. A murmur rippled through the audience. Someone clapped loudly, then stopped. Bill laughed, a short, dismissive sound, and attempted to reclaim the moment with sarcasm. "So now I'm the villain?" he asked. Jaime didn't laugh. He met Bill's gaze and said quietly, "No. But you're not listening." That single sentence seemed to crack something open. The audience leaned in collectively. Bill tried to interrupt, but Jaime continued, explaining that conversations like this weren't about winning but understanding, that dismissing lived experiences over sensitivity was exactly why people stopped trusting platforms that claimed to value truth. His words came faster now, not angry, but urgent. Applause broke out again, stronger, more unified, echoing off the studio walls. Bill glanced toward the camera, then back at Jaime, visibly irritated. He attempted to redirect, joking about time constraints, but the rhythm was gone. The banter had collapsed into confrontation. Jaime finished his thought, then leaned back, exhaling slowly, as if grounding himself. The audience waited, breath held. Maher tapped his desk and announced a commercial break earlier than scheduled. The signal music began, bright and artificial against the tension. Cameras shifted. In that in-between moment, When the show was technically paused but nothing truly stopped, Jaime stood up. He didn't make a scene. He didn't shout. He looked directly at Bill and said, softly but clearly, "If this is how the conversation goes, I'm good." Security and staff moved instinctively, unsure whether to intervene or stay invisible. Bill opened his mouth, perhaps to joke, perhaps to argue, but Jaime was already stepping away from the chair. A few audience members stood and applauded. Others watched in stunned silence. As Jaime walked toward the edge of the set, the heat of the lights followed him, and the moment crystallized into something irreversible, the instant when a friendly exchange turned into a line crossed on live television. Backstage, the air felt colder, quieter, as if the sound had been sucked out of the building the moment Jaime Fox stepped through the curtain. The muffled theme music from the studio bled faintly through the walls, cheerful and wrong. A production assistant froze mid-step, clipboard pressed to her chest, eyes wide. Another whispered into a headset, voice trembling as he tried to explain what had just happened to someone who hadn't seen it with their own eyes. Jaime kept walking, posture steady, jaw set, not looking for validation or confrontation, just distance. A senior producer caught up to him near the hallway that led to the green room. "Jaime, give us a minute," she said, breathless but composed, her tone trained for crisis. He stopped, turned, and listened. She spoke quickly, explaining they could reset the segment, shift topics, make it lighter. Jaime nodded once, respectfully, but his answer was simple. "I'm not here to be talked over," he said. "Not tonight." There was no anger in his voice, just certainty. The producer hesitated, then nodded, realizing there was no leverage left. Inside the studio, Bill Maher returned to his desk alone as the commercial break ended. The applause sign flickered uncertainly, then lit up. The clapping that followed was polite, confused, and noticeably thinner. Bill tried to smile it off, launching into a joke about spirited conversations, but it landed with a dull thud. He shifted in his chair, glanced toward the empty seat where Jaime had been, and cleared his throat. The audience sensed it, the moment had slipped out of his control. No punchline could pull it back. Meanwhile, backstage staff clustered around monitors, watching social media explode in real time. Clips of the confrontation were already circulating, grainy phone videos posted by audience members, captions racing ahead of context. Jaime Fox walks off, tension erupts live, you could feel it through the screen. Each refresh brought thousands more reactions. Some praised Jaime's composure, others accused him of overreacting, but everyone agreed on one thing: something real had happened. Jaime sat in the green room, alone now, scrolling briefly through his phone before locking it and setting it face down. He wasn't interested in the noise yet. A longtime member of his team entered quietly, closing the door behind him. "You good?" he asked. Jaime exhaled, rubbing his hands together. "Yeah," he said, "I just wasn't gonna play that game." There was a pause. "They want a statement?" his team member asked. Jaime shook his head. "Not tonight." Back on set, Bill attempted to regain momentum, pivoting to the next guest earlier than planned. The rhythm was off. The laughter came late, if at all. Even the monologue callbacks felt strained. Viewers at home sensed it too, an awkwardness that lingered, an unspoken absence that dominated the screen more than any joke could fill. The show continued, but the energy never fully recovered. When the episode finally wrapped, the applause felt like relief rather than celebration. Crew members moved faster than usual, breaking down equipment, avoiding eye contact. Bill disappeared into his office without his usual post-show banter. Outside, the night had thickened with reporters and fans who had caught wind of the walk-off. Camera lights flared as Jaime exited through a side door, jacket pulled on, expression unreadable. "Jaime, why did you leave?" someone shouted. "Any regrets?" another asked. He paused at the edge of the curb, turned slightly, and offered a brief smile, not for the cameras, but for the people watching closely. "Some conversations matter," he said. "And how you have them matters too." Then he got into the car and was gone. By morning, the moment had hardened into narrative. Morning shows debated it in clipped segments. Opinion columns framed it as a culture war skirmish. Comedians weighed in, some cautiously, others boldly. Clips were slowed down, analyzed frame by frame, every pause and glance dissected for hidden meaning. Bill Maher released a short statement defending open dialogue and insisting no one had been kicked off, while Jaime remained silent. That silence did more than any rebuttal could. Fans filled his social media with messages of support, stories of times they'd felt unheard, applauding the choice to walk away rather than perform discomfort for entertainment. Even critics conceded that the moment felt unscripted, raw in a way television rarely allowed anymore. It wasn't just a celebrity clash, it was a rupture in the carefully managed illusion of late-night debate. Days later, when Jaime finally spoke in an interview, he didn't name names or rehash lines. He talked about respect, about listening, about knowing when staying seated costs more than standing up. "I love conversation," he said. "But it's gotta be real." The clip went viral too, calmer but just as powerful. The episode became one of those television moments people referenced years later, a shorthand for when entertainment collided with conviction. For Bill Maher's show, it was a reminder that control can evaporate in seconds. For Jaime Fox, it was a quiet declaration that not every stage is worth standing on, especially when the cost is your voice. And somewhere between the applause signs and the scrolling feeds, audiences realized they'd witnessed something rare. Not a meltdown, not a stunt, but a line drawn in real time, under hot lights, with no script to soften the edge.